Those who believe the Bible honestly and look forward to fulfilling the promises made to the Jewish people and the land of Israel regard the reconstruction of the temple as an essential part of that fulfillment. For centuries, Christians have hoped for Jesus' second coming and the promise of eternal life. However, one must first decipher a great deal of signage. One of these includes building a third temple, and now it's the time to prepare for its ceremony. Despite the Muslim community's endeavors to disprove any connection between current Israel and ancient Judea, preparations for rebuilding the third temple, including the making of the temple's vessels and the education of Levites and Kohanim, continue. The Jerusalem Islamic Authority, the Waqf, systematically covers up or destroys any trace of the first and second holy temples in order to invalidate the Jewish claim to the Temple Mount. With complete disregard for the millennia-old treasures they are destroying, the Waqf, which is in charge of administering the site, has dug up and thrown the ancient and precious ruins of the Beit HaMikdash in a public landfill. The Israeli government handed over the administration of the Temple Mount to the Waqf in 1967, and since then, the Waqf has worked with Israeli police to prevent Jews and Christians from worshiping on the Mount and even from entering the compound. Since the destruction of the last Jewish temple by the Roman general Titus in AD 70, Jews have prayed every day, "May it be your will that the temple is soon restored in our own time," despite the Israeli government's permission for police to enforce this discriminatory tradition. Several groups in recent years have combined spiritual piety with substantial social change. Director of the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, Chaim Richman, claims that a temple in waiting has been built not far from the Western Wall in the Old City. Richman told Chris Mitchell of CBN News that the Temple Institute is actively involved in the research and planning of the restoration of service in the Holy Temple, going so far as to provide operational designs for the construction of the temple in accordance with the most modern standards. Over 60 precious temple vessels necessary for worship in the soon-to-be rebuilt temple have already been manufactured by the Institute. The Levitical instruments and the breastplate of the high priest, which is set with the 12 precious stones representing the 12 tribes of Israel, are also prepared. On top of that, the Institute was responsible for making the priestly garb. A new group of Levitical priests, Kohanim, is now in training, and they will wear these robes when they enter the priesthood. Aaron, who was a Levite, and his offspring were the only people designated as Cohen. Therefore, Jews who trace their genealogy back to the tribe of Levi and are descendants of Aaron, Moses' brother, are eligible to serve as Levitical priests. As a prevalent Jewish surname today, Cohen may indicate a link to the house of Aaron. Those Levites who weren't direct descendants of Aaron were responsible for maintaining the temple and its contents, while the Kohanim were in charge of sacrifices. Nearly 95 years have passed since a British magazine claimed that Jerusalem's chief rabbi Kook had founded Torat Kohanim, a yeshiva aimed at preparing Levites to serve in a reconstructed temple. It was stated that students of Kook's school took part in temple sacrifices just as those performed in the first and second temples. To a question from a Jerusalem Zionist executive, the chief rabbi explained that his institution was primarily a Torah academy, though he did concede that the recent establishment of a Palestinian mandate to give Jews a homeland in the ancient land of Israel revealed a divine providence that allowed the improbable to become probable. That is to say, with the Jews finally back in their homeland, the prospect of a new temple was no longer out of the question. And so too, there will come a day when all nations realize the truth of our claims to be temple area. The chief rabbi concluded his response with a note of optimism. In the hands of its original and eternal owners, the people of Israel, People D's, from time immemorial, this great holy house will be established there, and all the world will know and recognize that the prophetic vision regarding this holy place, that my house will be called a house of prayer for all the nations, will come to pass. They and nobody else. Following the precedent set by Chief Rabbi Kook, the Temple Institute and the Third Temple Academy have begun making preparations for the Third Temple, in the hopes that God will quickly fulfill his predictions regarding the temple. To train Kohanim and Levites for the Third Temple, a field school was established near Mizpeh, Jericho in 2009. The Dead Sea was scoured for unhewn stones in 2010 to be used in the construction of the temple altar. Stones in such perfect condition are thought to adhere to the rule that they must not have been worked on with metal, according to Leviticus 27:5. In a little over half an hour, you may drive from Jerusalem to Mizpeh, Jericho, and visit the Third Temple Academy, which is located on the road that leads to Jericho and the Jordan Valley. The school has constructed a temple model so that its priesthood students may participate in ritual sacrifices as they learn about the temple's history and function. Kohanim are also prepared for the daily Tamid service that takes place in the Holy Temple as part of the regular temple services. Despite the tight quarters and the usual stress of initial attempts, the overall effect was spellbinding as we saw a sacred ceremony first recorded in Torah 4,000 years ago, but neglected for 2,000 years of exile. As the modern-day descendants of Aaron, the first high priest and father of all Kohanim, worked tirelessly to carry out their given tasks, the details of the ancient scriptures and descriptions began to take shape, read a Facebook post. At the Temple Institute, 4 Kohanim pass by a portable altar that can be reassembled inside the third temple. 2 priests transport jars of pure olive oil to the third temple storage facility. The 3-pronged fork used to present sacrifices to the flames atop the altar is kept on the ramp leading up to the altar. The ashes from the previous day will be emptied out of the copper vase. A significant new development since then is that the Kohanim in training performed an accurate, authentic reenactment of the Korban Pesach this Pesach. Over the past 2,000 years, no one has seen such an offering made. The Kohanim dressed in white and use holy objects in the film from the Temple Institute's reenactment. All of the uniforms, ships, and reenactments are the result of years of study. During the ritual of the Passover lamb, the blood was passed from one Kohanim to another in silver cups called mizrach in the beautiful Samarian hills near Shiloh. The Jewish people's inability to perform the Korban Pesach on Har Habayis in accordance with halakha is inexcusable and intolerable. A Kohen collects the blood from the sacrifice with a silver mizrach. The priest takes the blood and splashes it in the corner of the altar. All of Israel, we implore you to make the Korban Pesach the focus of your Passover Seder preparations and conversation. The Korban Pesach symbolizes Israel's unwavering opposition to any and all types of idolatry. Richmond continues, "We can only hope to fulfill our divine calling to be a light to the nations and celebrate Yom Tov appropriately in the restored Jerusalem if we have a firm grasp on what the Passover experience is all about." The Omer, barley offering, was brought to the temple as a trial run on the second day of Pesach this year, in accordance with Leviticus 23:10. In the third temple, the Kohanim will only sacrifice a small portion of the Omer and consume the rest as part of their service. "We have enough in place today to resume divine service and build the temple," Richmond says, adding, "But clearly a lot has to happen in order for this to happen. From the time you start to put the sickle to the standing grain, count back 7 weeks." Deuteronomy 16:9. Assembling the red heifer for the third temple's rite of purification. There are significant challenges that need to be overcome before construction on a new temple can begin, despite the fact that the temple's vessels have been produced and the priests are in training. Finding a ritually pure red heifer is currently missing, which is required to carry out the command to utilize a red heifer as a means of purifying the altar. Specimens meeting these criteria must be flawless. Even little variations in hair color are unacceptable. A New Jersey red heifer was disqualified last year because she had a black calf, and there have been other instances of red heifers being disqualified for having black offspring. Because of giving birth, a cow is no longer eligible for breeding. Instead of hoping for one to arrive in a herd somewhere in the world, the Temple Institute has started a red heifer breeding operation, which involves implanting frozen red Angus embryos into Israeli domestic cattle. To that end, a funding drive is currently being crowdfunded. The total amount raised so far is close to $31,000. A Cohen and some Temple Institute guys check out some Israeli cattle. Jerusalem, I have guards stationed at your gates. They will sound the alarm at all hours. You who worship the Lord, rest not until he builds his city of Jerusalem and makes her the glory of the nations. Isaiah 62:6-7. No hammer, chisel, or another iron tool could be heard at the temple site because only blocks dressed at the quarry were utilized in its construction. 1 Kings 6:7. To adhere to the biblical mandate that no metal instrument be used in the construction of the temple, an edifice of peace, a group named the Temple Mount Faithful, directed by Gershon Solomon, has actually prepared the cornerstones for a new temple using diamond rather than steel cutting tools. Water from the biblical pool of Siloam was used to bless the 6-ton stones. Solomon and his supporters have been trying to set these cornerstones atop the Temple Mount for a number of years, but they have been repeatedly prevented by Israeli security forces. Solomon added, "Sadly, the weakness of the Israeli leadership did not allow us to move the cornerstones to the correct position." He was referring to the fact that the temple must be rebuilt on the Temple Mount. The third temple will be constructed in the exact same spot as the first and second temples. According to a hadith, Muhammad once dreamed he was traveling to the farthest mosque to have a meeting with the other prophets of the Bible. This is commonly understood to refer to Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. Here, he met with Gabriel the Archangel, Jesus Christ, and Yahweh in the second heaven. The story continues with him meeting Joseph in the third heaven, then moving on to Aaron, Moses, Abraham, and God in the succeeding heavens. Currently, the Temple Mount is home to both the Mosque of Omar, also known as Al-Aqsa, and the gold-covered Dome of the Rock, which is said to contain the rock from which Muhammad is said to have ascended to heaven. There is little hope that Jews will succeed in constructing the third temple on the Temple Mount, due to the Muslim claim of sovereignty of the area. The Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount is considered the third holiest mosque in all of Islam. Foretelling the future temple in the book of Daniel, preparing a modern-day priesthood is an act of anticipation and faith, as it is stated unequivocally that another temple will be erected by the prophets Daniel and Ezekiel and the Apostle Paul. For 1 week, 7 years, he will make a firm commitment with the people, but in the midst of that week he will put an end to sacrifice and grain offering, Daniel 9:27. Muslims claim the location as their own and refuse to allow the construction of a Jewish temple there. Paul gives us a hint in his letter to the Thessalonians, "Let no one fool you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will stand in defiance of and seek to exalt himself above all that is revered or deemed divine, ultimately establishing a throne for himself in God's holy dwelling." The man destined for disaster is often called the anti-Messiah, and billions of people will follow him from the time of peace into the 3.5 years of Jacob's suffering, also called the Great Tribulation. We can't prevent this individual from showing up and wanting to be worshipped as God in the new temple. However, we can get ready to discern the signs of his arrival and strengthen ourselves and others in the faith so that we can endure the widespread persecution that will be common during that time, even unto death. Despite the widespread hope that a rapture will deliver Christians from the coming tribulation, millions of Christians are now living through the worst of the tribulation as they see the murder and destruction at the hands of Muslim extremists. Ruth Graham, the wife of evangelist Billy Graham, said in 1975, "I would rather prepare myself to go through the tribulation and be joyfully surprised by an unexpected rapture than expect to be raptured only to find myself going through the tribulation." This may not be the most scholastic approach to the issue, but it holds water. Through Yeshua HaMashiach and the Ruach HaKodesh, we can get ready to face adversity and recognize false messiahs. Until the great day of the Lord puts an end to all persecution and suffering worldwide, we will enjoy peace, hope, joy, and righteousness, and be victorious in the face of persecution via the Ruach. Here I am, Lord Jesus, send me not a stranger. Revelation 22:20. That's all for today's video. If you want to watch more such videos like this, remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel.